The next operation we'll look at on matrices is the idea of determinants. And we'll start with the determinant of a 2 by 2 matrix. The determinant of a 2 by 2 matrix A is going to be denoted with vertical bars around the A. For a generic matrix A, B, C, D, we would use the vertical bars instead of the square brackets around the matrix to denote the determinant. And then the determinant would be defined by AD. We would multiply down the main diagonal, minus BC, multiplying the other way. Let's do an example with this 2 by 2 matrix 1, 2, 4, 5. I need to multiply down the main diagonal, so 1 times 5 is 5. We then subtract, and we multiply the other way. 2 times 4 is 8. And we know that 5 minus 8 is 3, so we have the determinant of this matrix is 3. For larger matrices, it's a little bit more complicated. We're going to start with the entry in the first row, first column. We're then going to essentially delete that row and column and multiply by the resulting determinant. We're not going to really delete it. We're going to need those numbers later, but we're going to act like they don't exist and multiply the number that we had in the first step by the resulting determinant. We then subtract the entry in the first row, second column, times the appropriate determinant that comes from deleting that row and column. We then add the entry in the first row, third column, times the appropriate determinant, and we continue this process for every column where we alternate the signs, add the first, subtract the second, add the third, subtract the fourth, etc. Here I have a 3 by 3 determinant. We start with the entry in the first row, first column, which is a 1. We're then, like I said, essentially going to delete that row and column and multiply by the determinant of what's left, which would be 3, 5, 1, negative 1. We then subtract the entry in the first row, second column, which is 2, and then we delete that row and column that the 2 is in, and we find the determinant of what's left, which is 0, 5, 2, negative 1. Finally, we look at the entry in the first row, third column, which is a 1, so we have plus 1. And then we delete that row and column and find the determinant of what's left, which is 0, 3, 2, 1. We can then start simplifying, finding these 2 by 2 determinants. We started with a 3 by 3 and it broke down into 2 by 2 determinants. If we would have started with a 4 by 4, we would have broken it down to 4 3 by 3 determinants, which we would then have to repeat this process on to get it down to the 2 by 2. For the first one, I have 3 times negative 1, which is negative 3, minus 5. Moving on to the next, we have a minus 2. And we multiply that by the determinant, which would be 0 minus 10. We then have, for our final one, 1 times 0 minus 6. We can now start to simplify. We'll start with the things inside of parentheses. That gives us 8 minus 2 times negative 10 plus negative 6, which is the same thing as negative 8 plus 20 minus 6, which is just 6. So the determinant here is 6.